Crash Bandicoot has remained a titan in the world of platformers, and during his time and all the adventures, the series has managed to develop a decently complex story. So join me as we go through all the fun moments that you can find here. Hi everybody, I'm here at a small home on the countryside. Nothing exciting here, just farmland, crops, tractors, and the looming threat of a tornado. I do like Crash Bandicoot now, a challenging collection of games, fun to play, never to 100%, and story-wise, the title character isn't even that impactful to the storyline. He's just happy to be here. Now, Crash Bandicoot takes place on mostly identical version of Earth, with the most iconic location being Sanity Island as part of the Wumpa Islands. Anywhere from hundreds to thousands of years before 1996, there were tribes that frolicked all across the land, and in this period lived two shaman brothers by the name of Aku Aku and Uka Uka. They did two things that everyone liked. They helped out the community whenever possible, and they also wore masks, and everybody loved them for it. When the brothers started getting older, they feared the wall of death they were rapidly speeding toward, and decided not to do that. Instead, they performed an ancient ritual that by proxy converted their souls, and they both would then decide to go inhabit their respective masks. Now, for a while, things were about the same. Aku Aku and Uka Uka were having a jolly, wonderful, whimsical time, until Uka Uka decided not to. He makes an evil tree using this source of power called Mojo, this being a resource that exists in all life, and he was probably gonna do bad stuff, but Aku Aku says no, beats his brother to death, but not really, he's already like a spirit. Uka Uka is then imprisoned, and Aku Aku then vows to continue defending his home wherever and whenever possible. From this point on, many years later, but at least still before 1996, we got the main villain. This is Neo Cortex, a rotten little guy with a big old forehead. He was born in a circus to a couple of clowns within a wagon that was escaping an angry crowd in Illinois, and quickly fell in love with science, and wanted to pursue a future with it. And unlike literally every other part of the world where this would be supported by good parents, the clowns said, "No, you will not be a scientist. This is just a phase. You're gonna be a clown." And then the circus tattoos a giant N on his forehead that was short for nerd. Cortex's parents then die in a tragic circus explosion, leaving him with nothing but jaundice and an above-average letter stuck on his head. I made a tier list. It could have been a worse letter. With no reason to stay in a circus, he left home and enrolled in the Academy of Evil, where he would then meet Nitrous Brio, also known as just N-Brio. Just for future reference, many of the characters use this N pun thing, so just be ready for that. Now, these two would become pretty decent friends in the Academy. Cortex would then continue to be bullied for destroying the grade curves and being an evil genius when the school was meant for all kinds of bad people, but the main thing Cortex would do here is start planning his dreams. Around 8, he gets the idea to use evolved animals as his minions for an army, so he invents the Evolvo Ray, which can let him do that very specific thing he wants. And then his first subjects, his test parrots, you know what? Not a good start. Why would you experiment on the only creatures that even remotely love you? Eventually, the two would graduate and move on to the Wumpa Islands in hopes of growing an army, knowing that this area would have a whole lot of Australian animals to test on, and a human populace that was not capable of stopping them on account of being isolated tribal people from the rest of the world. What they didn't know is about Aku Aku and Uka Uka, so one day, Cortex would find and end up recruited by the Ukester, who was still trapped and unable to do anything, instead opting to work with Cortex, being the only option he had. And this is the start of an abusive relationship on both sides. Then began the mass experiments. The original plan was to have a wombat lead an army of mutated animals to begin a world takeover. Unfortunately, wombat skulls were not strong enough to survive being rammed into wooden boxes, so instead they opted for a bandicoot. A bandicoot who could survive ramming into wooden boxes, but after numerous tests would receive permanent brain damage. And this leader bandicoot would be known by the name of course, the ever iconic titular Rashworth Cortex the First, aka Crash Bandicoot. Then comes 1996. Experimenting is going well. Cortex has started chucking animals into his innovative Evolvo Ray, which rapidly advanced their everythings to roughly human-level intelligence, as he starts putting every animal into the Cortex Vortex, this being a propaganda machine that would instantly make every animal loyal to Cortex for world domination. Unfortunately, on this first test with Crash, it was unstable, and Brio warned Cortex. Cortex hurts Brio's feelings, calling him a Frankenstein freak, and this situation would then allow Crash to escape. One problem for Crash, though, Cortex biologically produced a girlfriend named Tana, so Crash would have to stay motivated to be the bestest war general of all the land. And she didn't escape. Crash has to go back. Tana makes me a bit uncomfortable, not gonna lie. What was Cortex trying to say, making Tana? Crash washes up on Sanity Beach. Aku Aku knows Crash is their only hope, and the two of them make their way back to Cortex to stop him. So Crash and Tana can... I don't know, look at my channel. Do I seem like I've ever talked to a woman? The answer is yes, ask your mother. On the way back, Crash accidentally peeves Aku Aku's old tribe and the tribe leader Papu Papu, and other successful mutations come to intervene, including Ripperoo, Koala Kong, and Pinstripe. Remember Pinstripe, this one's specifically important. So then Crash beats up Embryo, launches Cortex out of the sky, and the day is done diddly done been saved. On his way back down, Cortex crash lands into a spooky, scary cave and discovers crystals. The crystals are so special a time skip happens. In this time skip, Cortex replaces Embryo with N-Jin, and also moves to space. Alongside that, Tana also finds Pinstripe, who believes in taking care of himself with a balanced diet and a rigorous exercise routine. And also, he has lots of money, so, you know, they break up. Crash is single again. And with a face like that, I would be horrified if I had nothing to lose, but unfortunately now we got Coco. This is Crash's younger sister, and quite literally possesses all the brainpower between the two of them. In 1997, we got Crash 2. Crash gets abducted by Cortex and he claims the world is in danger, and will be destroyed by some sort of planet alignment disaster. So to save everyone, Crash is told he's gonna have to obtain all the crystals from each level. However, at the same time, Embryo snitches on Cortex, claiming that Crash should actually be searching for gems that could easily destroy Cortex's base. So because Crash keeps getting crystals, because you can't literally progress otherwise, Embryo then sends out mutants in response. Ripperoo returns from the last game. There's the Komodo Bros. They don't matter. Then we got Tiny Tiger, who's actually gonna end up being a minion to Cortex after this, but for now he's loyal to Embryo, I guess. Tiny isn't allowed in space or something. Now this game has two major endings, both based on if Crash gets the gems or not. The non-canon ending sees Cortex and Engine losing, and the canon ending sees Cortex and Engine losing, but this time the gang listens to Embryo, and this is hilariously petty. I'm glad Cortex lost because he hurt Embryo's feelings about the whole Cortex Vortex incident. This is deserved, this is funny. Literally seconds later, Crash 3. Cortex falls from space and the station lands where Uka Uka was stuck in, freeing him, and as he does, and as he looks at Cortex's horrifying flat light bulb head, hires Dr. Nefarious Tropy, better known as N-Tropy, and he's gonna do some time traveling, fellas. I can't be too upset, at least it's not a multiverse. Give me a second. Crash 3 is much of the same. Crash has gotta stop the rotten primary colored men. Tiny is back and happy to be here. Dingo Dial is not plot relevant, but will be very, very, very later on. And the rest of them do their ever iconic power of lose. Once again, another epic fail for the bad fellas. This time Crash traps Cortex, N-Tropy, and Uka Uka into a time prison where they're gonna be stuck there forever, depending on what ending you get. It's time for a timeline split. Crash has a multiverse, we all know that. Crash 4 is literally about that. I can't be all too upset about there being a multiverse, because it's actually used in a fun way. Like Crash 2, Crash 3 has a regular ending and a completionist ending. The completionist ending leads to Crash 4, as in like the new Crash 4. The regular ending, where the villains just fail, leads to Crash 4, the Wrath of Cortex 1. Now it's somewhere between 1998 to 2001. By Cortex and Uka Uka escape, some wacky additional spin-off entries show up. First, there's Crash Team Racing. An alien named Nitrous Oxide wants to turn Earth into a giant parking lot. What are you parking for? How big would that Walmart need to be? Doesn't matter. Crash and his friends and enemies all need to work together to decide who's the best racer out of all of them to take down Oxide in a winner-takes-all race for the world. In the end, the canon winner is most likely either Crash, Coco, or Coco's pet tiger, who they adopted during their time-traveling adventure, Purra. Any of these options are funny. We also got Crash Bash. Uka Uka calls his brother a pussy, and as such, he gambles the world over their bickering. So the Bandicoots get summoned. Uka Uka brings an uneven amount of antagonists, so they have to balance out the teams based on, I don't know, vibes or something. I guess that makes sense. Dingo Dial is generally a good dude. As for Tiny, I don't know, he seems easily manipulated. What are you gonna do? This is a party game. It's not very good. Nobody cares. Next game. Okay, now it's time for the Wrath of Cortex on October 29th, 2001. All the bosses from Crash 3 are holding a meeting on how to actually be good at things that are bad, and summons the Elementals, these being 4 other masked people that control the 4 major elements of water, earth, fire, and air. So once again, Crash pulls up his socks to his knees, slaps on his blue jeans, short, what kind of fabric are these? What kind of pants are these? Nope, Uka Uka loses again. Him and Cortex fight in the Arctic for a good while, and now Crunch actually comes home with the Bandicoots and wants to turn a new leaf. So cool! A new family member who is happy and jolly to be here. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. And I'm right, nothing bad happens. 2002 to 2003, Crash's huge adventure. Uka Uka is about to let Cortex go for real, for sure this time. Why are they even working together? Like, neither of them gain anything. It's not mutual benefit. In fact, they don't like each other, and both are extremely susceptible to wood chippers. Cortex shrinks the planet. This is unneeded, and as punishment for his ambition and ignorance, he's forced to feel the pain of fusing with all of his minions. Horrible punishment. kind of a cool cliche. I wish more stuff did this. And Entrance, the hypnotist guy, Entrance, wow, good naming. He's hired to hypnotize the Bandicoots to willingly join the villains. Now, Crash is actually able to escape his fate, and instead they catch fake Crash. This is exactly what it sounds like. This is a guy who isn't Crash. He's a fake one. He just exists. He looks exactly like the other Crash. No idea what his deal is. Cortex didn't even make him. What are you doing here? What is your problem? We won't ever know. And that's okay. Fun fact, you can't actually hypnotize people to do things against their will. All levels of hypnosis are to an extent an act of convincing the person to do something they might be hesitant to do. You know what that means? Coco Bandicoot is suppressing her wishes to slaughter her brother and destroy the planet. That's a bad sibling, but it doesn't matter. The bad guys lose again. Crash Bandicoot, it's Crash Bandicoot. He never loses, he only wins. Crash Nitro Kart is next on November 11th, 2003. Team Crash is dicking around at their home. Team Cortex are being mischievous and evil and shit. All of a sudden, they all does get abducted, but not Dingo Dial. Entrance captures him off screen for no real reason. All the pals are brought to an alien planet in another galaxy where the Cosmic Emperor Velo, the XXVII, I don't care about Roman numerals. I'm gonna go with the 27th. You guys can't get mad at me. He decides they all gotta go racing. So they go racing. So everyone's sent out to 4 different planets, and after getting all the wins, all the good racing, all the trophies, all the Crash Nitro Karts we made along the way, there's 2 endings, and I'm simply gonna say both are canon. Try and stop me. You can't. Please don't. I have no enemies. I like to try to keep it that way. At the end of the race war, no, not that other kind, Emperor Velo, probably the 27th, is revealed to be a giant robot and loses all the respect of his citizens. Then Crash decides to be a good guy Gus and lets Velo stay as the Emperor as they go home. And then Team Cortex shows up. This time, Velo simply refuses to give the Emperor stick. It goes wrong. Cortex breaks the funny stick, capable of teleporting them home, which was the one thing they needed. It was very embarrassing. And as they're about to have their kneecaps shattered by the natives of a foreign planet, Tiny Tiger fixes the funny stick and becomes the ruler of this entire galaxy of the former Emperor. So that means Tiny the Tiger, in canon, has taken over a neighboring galaxy, and we can only hope that we are not next. September 28th, 2004, Crash Twinsanity. It's been roughly 3 years since the end of Wrath of Cortex, and now Cortex and Uka Uka have been frozen throughout all that time. Or not, I don't think it matters. There could be 2 Cortexes. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Dr. Cortex returns to the Wumpa Islands and immediately paralyzes Coco, so she's out of the story for a little bit. Cortex then brings in as many of his former goons as possible to curb stomp Crash, and this means nothing. They fall into a cave, figure out their problems as father and son by a weird technicality, and then those little parrots, little baby Cortex disintegrated show up. Turns out they weren't destroyed and fully ceased to be. Rather, they were simply brought to the 10th dimension and exposed to an unholy amount of radiation that evolved them naturally, as the 10th dimension is known to do. Really, a lot of this game is Cortex's old sins coming back to haunt him. Honestly, it's just ripping him apart as much as humanly possible. Uka Uka is upset about Cortex being a bad business partner. He's an enemy, and Jin and Brio and Entropy are trying to find treasure and all hate Cortex for different reasons. And Jin specifically, I'm glad about. His relationship with Cortex seems relatively abusive. And Dingo Dial, he's here. He has his house destroyed. What did Dingo Dial do to deserve any of this? He just keeps getting hurt. He didn't deserve any of this. Anyway, knowing that there's creatures alive that look like this, Cortex finds the device called the Psychotron that can teleport everyone to the 10th dimension to curb stomp the funny birds. They're horrifying, I'm with him. Then Coco unfreezes from the freeze thing she had going on, breaks the machine, and then immediately gets frozen again by the Psychotron. She is an objective liability in the situation. If this remains a consistent thing, it's gonna be a problem. So now Cortex has to repair the Psychotron, and this is gonna require another genius to help him build. And knowing that Coco is a dumbass, and knowing that none of the other villains like him right now, Cortex decides to go pick up his niece/daughter, Nina Cortex. He claims niece, it's implied daughter. I don't want to think about that. Cortex, I love you, but I don't know how any other human could love you to that extent when you have a giant N on your head. Nina is located at Cortex's good old academy where he grew up, and after confronting Dingo Dial and giving him an appropriate apology and payment he rightfully deserves, not really. They grab Nina, beat the hell out of the headmistress, and make their way to the 10th dimension. And here, the remainder of the game isn't too bad. The evil twins are stopped, Nina is temporarily captured by the horrifying Crash of this dimension, and at the end, following victory, Cortex decides to send Crash back there as a bonus for his first real victory. And you know what? It fails, it goes horribly wrong, like it always does, and Cortex is banished to the horrifying hellscape known as the Mind of Crash Bandicoot. Full of tiny crashes and foolish regret, a regretful painful moment for the man with a strangely sharp flat part of the top of his head. We even got an ending for the end gang who was looking for treasure. They perish and burn to a horrible death to... Uh-oh. Let's talk about Spyro. So obviously this is a Crash video, but Spyro is kind of like a half-brother to Crash through the constant collabs and crossovers. A lot of their content is intertwined, but I'm not gonna go into Spyro, because first off, there's a lot, and secondly, we also got Skylanders. Hell no. Not today, maybe someday. I've served my time, though. I still have the scars, and my parents still feel the financial ripples my Skylanders obsession brought to the household. I've even got Whamshell. I've seen some shit. I know Crash is in the games and in the Netflix show. By the way, there's a Netflix show, but I don't care yet. On June 1st of 2004, we do have official crossovers of Crash Purple and Spyro Orange, where Dr. Cortex and Spyro's enemy, Ripto, the whatever this animal is, team up, and then they gotta go beat the guys. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye, Spyro. See you later. October 21st, 2005, Crash Tag Team Racing. This game kind of sucks. The roster is objectively horrible, but that's fine. That's fine. No, it's whatever. Not a big deal. A cyborg by the name of Ebenezer von Clutch runs the amusement park of Motor World. After his time of World War II on Germany's side, I don't like the implications of that, but it's okay. He regrets it, seemingly. Let's ignore that and be optimistic. Team Crash and Team Cortex drive into Motor World at the same time. On account of Tiny being a cosmic diplomat, Nina is substituting for him. Now, Von Clutch is dying. In fact, he only has a few hours to live. The gems powering the park and him have all been stolen, so whoever of the gang can find the most gems will get all of his shit in some weird competition for, like, his will. It's kind of messed up, but it's funny. I like this premise. I wish more people had fun in their wills. I made a Kahoot about my life, and the winner's gonna get everything in my will. I don't care who wins. I would hope it's my mom or significant other, assuming I can know love, but you know, I won't be there to give my thoughts. The game happens, it gets done, and by the end of it, it's revealed the park mascot, Willy Wumpa Cheeks, the giant living Wumpa fruit. Wumpa fruits are like the main fruit of this franchise. He was doing all the stealing. Cortex retaliates by shooting him. Von Clutch runs out of life, and while drinking Willy's remains, horrifying, not cannibalism though, Crash coughs up the gem that can keep him alive, and then Crash accidentally knocks the gem out. It's not a big deal. Next game. October 10th, 2010, Crash Boom Bang. This game sucks a lot. This purple guy named Viscount holds a $100 million competition to find a giant crystal capable of making any dream a reality, and then Crash wastes it on a bunch of Wumpa fruits. He could have brought world peace, but nope. Fruit. Now here comes an odd spot, the redesign era. There's gonna be this period where everyone gets redesigned. Now I'm personally gonna keep it in this timeline, but I don't know. Honestly, it's not too much of a big deal. Like, it's a decade-old Wii game. The rivers of time aren't gonna implode on themselves. I mean, Tiny Tiger is wearing a shirt. Why does Uka Uka look like he went under a lawnmower? October 2nd, 2007, Crash of the Titans. Everyone's hanging out until Cortex flies on in and captures Coco, captures Aku Aku, and freezes Crunch. Luckily, Crash freaking snipes Aku Aku and saves him, so, you know, one person saved. Cortex is gonna use the mojo, the very same mojo that Uka Uka betrayed his brother over. He's gonna use it to create a better army of animals via mutants, and then build the Doominator, which can take over the world. The only thing we don't like more than that plan is Cortex's redesign. I hate that button nose. I wanna, like, actually, like, yank it off. It's so gross. Now, even though they got Coco, Uka Uka has finally, actually, for real this time, decided that Cortex is a liability, so he replaces Cortex with Nina, even though virtually everyone else is unhappy about it. Crash then uses Engine and Tiny to snitch about where Coco's being held hostage. Doominator goes wrong. Explosion. Failure. Day saved. We know it by now. Cortex is proud of Nina for being a rotten little betraying demon child. 1 year later, October 7th, 2008, Mind Over Mutant. I can tell you why this franchise died for a little bit based off of this box art. It's horrifying. Crash Bandicoot looks like a can opener. After the last game, Cortex dropped Nina off to the bad, evil, rotten school, and instead re-recruits Embryo, and they use the power of friendship and also Mojo to make mind control helmets, immediately taking over Crunch and Coco. As a bonus little flakelet of revenge, they hold Uka Uka hostage to produce more mojo by eating cake. The goal then becomes to find Uka Uka's source of power and these freaky little bones connected to him. It goes well, Embryo tries his best and gives up. Engine's also here. He gets sent to the emergency room with a shattered ribcage in the end. Cortex goes to space. Uka Uka, as a thank you, sends Crash and Aku Aku to space. I'm sure you can guess where this is gonna go. You look at Cortex and, you know, like, yeah, you're dead. Dead man. And this ends the Crash Bandicoot timeline. Well, this one at least. I don't know where to put these weird bootleggy mobile games, by the way. Who are these for? Yeah, I mean, a multiverse is here. Not really an annoying one. They actually, like, do stuff with it. Let me introduce this timeline. So, instead of Wrath of Cortex and potentially the classic trilogy, this line is going to include the Sane trilogy remakes along with Crash 4 It's About Time. I don't really need to repeat what's different in the remake. The main difference is that Coco from Crash 3 travels back to Crash 1 and I think Crash 2, and she comes in to help out. That's literally the only difference between them. Alright, this is what we're actually here for. March 26th, 2021. I know it's been a lot of years since the third game, but the exact time points don't quite matter in this situation. Following the best ending of Crash 3, where Cortex and Entropy have grown up from being babies and warped, Uka Uka has finally managed to create a rift that all of them can use to sneak out of the void. Somehow, despite repeating their lives in the void, they have retained their sanities. Maybe they were already gone? I don't know, it's Krog Bandicoot. The rift Uka Uka made has split up rifts to all kinds of universes, so the two decide to get Embryo and Engine to join them, make a generator to make more rifts, and eventually just take over everything. Even though they would have had to fight themselves from other dimensions, and they could have easily just gone to pick and choose and take over some of them. I mean, if there's infinite universes in this logic, there is no difference. Every character in this franchise is an idiot, except for Aku Aku. He's a plank of wood. For some reason, there exists 4 quantum masks who only awaken when there is a hole ripped in the multiverse. The gang immediately finds the first one, Lani Loli, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm gonna go with it, and the next step becomes finding the rest of them. Now, as Crash, Coco, and their team maneuver around to stop the villains, a few characters are causing more conflict. Entropy actually betrays Cortex once Engine and Embryo are defeated by Crash, and I feel like Cortex should have seen this coming, with Tropy being one of the 2 living things that he has been able to interact with during his entire second lifetime, where he's like regrown up. That's on you. You should have been able to see that coming. That's ridiculous. Tropy grabs nitrous oxide as a co-worker hostage for a bit, and also another version of himself that is, oh. This second trophy is from a universe where Cortex either never existed or never became a major conflict, and the Tana of this universe, unlike the one from the Prime universe, became a totally opposite character, and also her, Crash, and Coco of that universe are, dead. Whoops! And then, while this is happening, Dingo Dial, who retired from being a ruffian after Crash 3, he's settled down, he's trying to make his own little abode at a lovely little swamp restaurant. It fails, and then all the pals decide to meet up with the 2 deceased blue people, and to celebrate, everyone else visits the futuristic city, only to discover that Dr. Cortex has decided to betray the betrayal, and oh my goodness gravy, he kidnaps the time-traveling quantum mask, because there is one for time traveling, and he's gonna go back to the first experiment and get Bandicoots off the menu. Cortex makes his way back right to the events of Crash 1 to unexist all the mutated animals that have deliberately wronged him since throughout all the timeline. And the downfall of Cortex isn't the animals, it's himself. Past Cortex and future Cortex can't agree on running the experiment or not, and it goes horribly wrong, and he fails. He fails like he's always done. He will never find peace. He is tonight's biggest loser. The quantum masks send Cortex to the edge of the universe to rot, and then it's revealed that Crash actually broke part of the Cortex vortex by proxy, accidentally creating himself. Truly a beautiful character with a beautiful story to tell. And that's everything. Now technically we still got Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled and Crash on the Run, but I'm gonna treat these more like catch-alls. They mash together aspects from throughout the series. Canonically speaking, this is plausible, like as some multiversal tournament or a separate continuity. Currently in this newer timeline, things are going. Dingo Dial got his restaurant, it's probably gonna be shut down. Tana's a main character after not being one since, like, the first 98% of the game franchise. And the entropies are plotting further domination. And at the edge of the universe, Cortex is hanging out, enjoying, rotting in the void, till Uka Uka shows up and gives a new story in Crash 5. Which is probably not happening. For some reason, the next step was to make a live service Crash Bandicoot game. Now here's the people who like Crash Bandicoot. Here's the people who like live service games. And here's the Venn diagram. What do you mean it failed? I don't care for Crash Team Rumble. It's a 4v4 game. There's 13 characters. 3 of them are Spyro ones. One of them's a new character. This is an evolved animal Cortex created who genuinely hates him as a person. Catbat is a good guy, and we like Catbat here. There is even gonna be Ghost, one of the most iconic characters from the Call of Duty games. You wonder why this failed, but then you look at the 3 additional Spyro characters and the COD rep that got in before Tiny Tiger. There's nothing wrong with crossovers. It's like, but this is a game that does exist and was probably probably responsible for Crash not getting any additional games in the near future. Why would you put this in before Tiny Tiger? And because of it, Crash is now trapped in merchandise purgatory. Unless this video ages badly, that would be funny. I hope Crash gets to do more stuff both in his own stories and in general, because he doesn't feel like he does that much in his own stories besides exist, which, to be fair, he is good at. Anyway, make Crash 5 exclusively about Tiny Tiger taking over the multiverse. I mean, he's already partly there. Well, guys, I'm sure you know the drill. Funny statistic, gamer subs code, follow my socials and gunk. I don't even think I get reception out here. You know, I gotta drive down to the main town to even get a morsel of internet access. There is nothing out here for me. I don't get why people like it here. I mean, I respect it. I respect farmers, but don't get me wrong, I respect the whole process. Maybe down the road I'll change my mind, but right now I'm driven by ambition, and, you know, I don't want to look at cornfields my entire life. Oh, look! A tornado! Just like Crash Bandicoot. He spins, you know, woo, just like that. Woo! I'm literally me. That's literally me, guys. I'm not gonna make it out of this one.